can see it. Okay, so we're recording now. So guys, when I'm here on my main page, again, here's some welcome information for you guys. So it just has some basic information here, about the class in general here. I did create a video for you guys welcoming you to the class. Here's my syllabus. Here's the link to get into Remind. And then, a little bit of info about me. But then the more important thing here is the weekly activities. So last week when we were here, guys, I pulled this up for you all, and I kind of showed you, here are the notes. And every time you want to get your notes, you're always going to want to click on these three dots and always hit download the original file. I don't know why it does alternative formats, but usually it comes out not exactly the same. So I always go with download the original file. We have a playlist in YouTube of videos that I made. And when we were here last time, guys, I just wanted to do one section with you guys. So I did something like 0.1. And so what I wanted to do this afternoon was, number 2, let you all know that the week 2 materials are up as well. Everything for weeks 1 and 2 are due by a week from tomorrow night. Okay, so they're due by Tuesday, April the 6th, by, right before midnight. So, so what I wanted to do today was, let me stop sharing this screen here. And so I'm going to stop sharing this part. Good, we got some more folks here. Excellent. And, okay, so I think, yes, okay, so you guys can see this now. So guys, these are the notes that I put in the week 1 and week 2 folders. So like I said, the last time we were here, we just went through 0.1. So what I wanted to do, not necessarily just do 0.2 or anything, because I'm going to assume a lot of you all kind of already have done these assignments or at least worked through them. But what I wanted to do was ask you all if you all had any questions that you wanted to ask me about. So Brenda, you're asking me if I'm muted. I'm not muted, but can you hear me?
I can now.
Okay, excellent. Great, perfect. Okay, so let me see. What was I going to do? Come back here, everyone. Okay. So I'm going to put that in the chat. So did anyone have any particulars or questions, or would you all prefer that I go over another lesson? Okay, so guys, I just put this in the chat, and what I wanted to do was bring it up to you guys. If y'all had any homework questions about anything, was there a particular problem that you were uncertain about, or did y'all feel like you were okay with that? Do you want me just to kind of go over another lesson? I'm happy to I'm flexible. I don't have a particular plan that I feel like I need to follow. I want to give you guys some opportunities to ask me some questions if y'all have any.
I think for me, the one that you have to break down and see how many times it multiplies doesn't really come easy to me. And if I could check my notes, I'll tell you which one I'm talking about.
Okay, yeah. Do me a favor. You can find that. Let me know, and I'll be more than happy to help you guys with that stuff. So, guys, remember, this is like I said, in an online class, we have it's kind of like I don't want to call it self-paced, but it's somewhat self-paced. I mean, you have to get assignments done by certain days, but I definitely want to open up to questions if y'all have any. I want to make sure that you guys feel okay about this stuff. So as Brenda for that, Samantha, you got a question for me? Question, Samantha? I saw you have your hand up. No. Okay, Brenda, see that your hand is up too. Maybe that you're talking about the question that you had. Let's see. There we go.
Can you hear me? Oh my God.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
I'm at work and we have really bad signal here.
That's,
I had a
that's all right.
question on the homework assignment. I believe it's like 0.2 and this
Okay.
one, and it was on question number 2. I like Brenda was saying the breaking down. That was
Okay.
one of the questions that I'm having a difficult time understanding.
Okay. Give me one quick second and let me see if I can pull it up. So let's see. Here we go. Okay. So let me see. Let me come back to where are we? Let me come back here. And yeah, so okay, so yeah, Brenda and Samantha, so you guys were talking about like LCD and prime factors, right? Okay, so I'll tell you what we're gonna do. Let me stop sharing this screen here. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna share, let's see, this part. Let me see, I wanna show, no, I'm sorry, not this one. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Is it this one? Maybe it's this one here. Yeah. Okay. So Samantha, this was a question that you had here. You had mentioned 0.2 number 2, and it says find the LCD or the least common denominator of the pair of fractions. Don't combine the fractions. Only find the LCD. Okay. So guys, one of the things that I wanted to mention was there's when we were doing these problems, or when you're doing these problems in general, you actually have a lot of options, right? And so there's a couple of different ways we can go about doing the problem here. And when you do this, get something real quick. And when you're going to do a problem like this, one of the things that usually comes in pretty handy is using our multiplication table. Sure. Samantha, I got your message. Yeah, I'm definitely going to. The session is being recorded, so I will send this out to everybody later on today. So one of the things I'm going to do, guys, is when I'm doing a problem like this, I want to look at the two denominators that I have, right? So the two denominators that I have are 4 and 6. Okay. So I'm going to use those two numbers, and one of the things that I'm going to do is I'm going to use my multiplication table. Okay. So the numbers that I'm thinking of right now are 4 and 6 because those are my denominators. At this point right here, for this particular problem, I'm not really concerned about what numbers I have on the top. I'm really concerned about the numbers on the bottom. So the numbers on the bottom are 4 and 6. I'm going to stop sharing this page real quick because I'm going to share one other one with you guys. And what I'm sharing with you all right now, and I want to make sure that you guys can see it. Yes, I'm sharing my multiplication table. And remember what we said, the two numbers that I was really concerned about were the numbers 4 and 6, right? So I'm going to use them going down. I mean, I could have used this. Oops, I could have used, oh, come on, Tim. I could have used this 4 and this 6 as well. It doesn't really matter, okay? So when I'm going along 4 and 6, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for the first number that they have in common. The first number they have in common is 12. So there's my LCD. It's always going to be that easy, right? So one of the things that I'm going to encourage you to do, and I don't know if I put it in the, I don't know if I uploaded it in your week 1 or week 2 folder, and if I didn't, I'm going to go back and I'm going to update it before the day is over, and I'm going to put this multiplication table in there. But one thing you can always do, guys, is just like go to Google and type in, multiplication table, something like that, something you can have a reference to, okay? But I will upload it for you guys in case I didn't. So I'm going to stop sharing this screen here, and I'm going to come back to the particular problem that I had, which was, let me see if I can come back to it. Here we go. I believe this is it. And yes, you guys can see this. So right here, I'm going to type in the number 12 because that was my answer. And this is what I mean by my lab is running a little slow. Like it's gonna check my answer, but it's just going really slow right now. So you gotta just bear with me for a minute. I'm surprised it's been down this long. Oh, come on. Wow, this is moving really slow, isn't it? There we go. Woo. Okay, I would have been real embarrassed if it would have said it wasn't right, right? Okay, so that's pretty much what I'm going to do for most of these problems. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can find another one, maybe a little further down. Okay, here we go. And so I'm going to show y'all how I'm going to do this problem, and I'm going to use the same approach, guys. Okay, I'm going to find my common denominator, and then I'm going to worry about what do I do after that step. So remember, right now the two numbers that I'm really concerned with are 10 and 9, right? Those are my denominators that I'm really concerned with. So let me stop sharing this page, and I'm actually going to write down the problem so that I can do it. So my problem is 1 over 10 plus 4 over 9. Okay, so let me stop sharing this part here. Let me come back and share my multiplication table with you guys again. Okay, and we said because my denominators are 10 and 9, those are going to be the numbers that I'm going to be looking at. Okay. And so the first number that they both have in common, let's see, is 90. Okay, so that's going to be my common denominator. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do, guys, I'm going to go ahead and write down the problem that I had. I had 1 over 10 plus 4 over 9. And we said, look, we found our common denominator, and our common denominator ended up being the number 90, right? Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, look, before I used to have the number 10, but now I have the number 90. So I have to ask myself, what did I multiply 10 by to get 90? So, well, I had to multiply this one by 9. So if I do the bottom one by 9, I got to do the top guy by 9 too. So 1 times 9 is going to give me 9. And then I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to say, look, I used to have a 9 before, and now I have a 90. So what did I multiply 9 by to get 90? Well, I multiplied it by 10. So I'm going to multiply this guy here by 10. And so 9 times 10, well, hey, there's my 90. And 4 times 10, here's my 40. Okay. And remember, in the middle, we were adding, so I'm going to put a plus. And so when I'm adding fractions, remember, my bottom number is not going to change. And then all I'm going to do here is I'm just going to add these two on top. And so 9 plus 40 is just going to give me 49. So my answer is going to be 49 over 90. So I'm going to stop sharing this. And oops, I'm going to come back to my my problem here. And let's see. Here we go. Okay, so I'm going to click on this guy right here. So here's my fraction button, right? So I'm going to type in 49, and then I'm just going to use my little down arrow on my keyboard, hit 90, and I'm going to check my answer. And whoa, look, that was, maybe it's working now. Maybe not, I guess, what you see. But, okay, yeah, it's moving pretty fast. And so, guys, I want to do this one here simply for the reason that my table, I know, doesn't go as my table that I pulled up on my multiplication table is a 15 by 15 table, right? So I don't have all of these numbers. So let me write down this problem here for you guys. And it is a 14 over 15 minus 41 over 45. Okay. So let me stop sharing this business with you guys here, and let me come back to my multiplication table, okay? And so, yes, I think you guys can see my table. Okay, so the denominators that we had, guys, were a 15, and the other one was a 45, right? So one thing I want you to notice is when I look at my table, and I see the number 15, as I look to the right, or if I would have come over here and started looking down, In either case, I see that 45 is one of the multiples of 15, right? So when I'm doing my problem, and my original problem was 14 over 15 minus 41 over 45, I want you to think about this for a minute. If my multiplication table kept going on forever, right, or at least further down, and I had a 45, the first number here would have been 45, right? So I could say, look, 45 is going to be my common denominator. So I'm going to write a 45 right here, and I'm going to write a 45 over here as well. And I'm going to ask myself, hey, look, I used to have a 15 before, and now I have a 45. So what did I have to multiply 15 by to get 45? Well, look, 1, 2, I had to multiply it by 3. So I'm going to multiply 14 by 3. And if you say, look, how do I do 14 times 3? Look, there's 14 times 1 times 2 times 3. So that's going to give me a 42. Okay. And then I'm going to say, what did I have to multiply 45 by to get 45? Well, I didn't really have to do much. I could multiply it by 1. So 41 times 1 will still stay 41. And if I subtract them, 42 minus 41 will leave me with a 1. Okay. A 1, oops, over 45, right? And so that'll be my answer. So let me stop sharing this business here with you guys. Come back over here, and let's take a look. Okay, so I'm going to click on this box here. I'll click on my little fraction button. 1 over 45. I'm going to hit chickadee check. And let's see. Oh my goodness, there we go. And we got it. Okay, so let me see. Let me stop sharing this business here with you guys, and let me see. Does anybody have any other questions? Or Brenda, is there anything in particular? I want to make sure that I was answering your question. Brenda, are we okay? Are we good? Okay.
I'm sorry.
So,
touch
go ahead.
screen computer isn't even helping.
Yeah, I know.
So I have a house full of math majors,
Awesome.
and none of them want to help me. They think it's too easy for them.
Yeah, I hear you. It's okay.
And they said, and they think I want to cheat, but I don't. I want to learn it.
Yeah. Okay, so let me ask you a question. Me going over that, was that answering the question that you were asking me?
No, mine's more the find the LCD of 4 minus 27 and 5 minus 18. Like, that's
Okay.
the one that.
Okay.
Is there another way to do it?
Yeah, 4 over 27 minus 5 over 18, right?
Like, I see the simple way, like you have to, but like when you start picking them,
Yeah.
that's what gets me.
Okay, so I think you guys can see this. So 4 over 27 minus 5 over 18. And all we're trying to do here, guys.
It's not minus. It's example 5 and point 2.
Okay, let me see.
It's on the notes. It's not the homework.
Okay, let me do this then. So let me come
like
back
we
here.
did it.
Uh-huh.
But like, is there another way to do it other than making these Christmas tree type of things?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Let me see. This one here?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So guys, is there another way to do it? There is, and the other way to do it, honestly, would be let me Google a bigger multiplication table, right? And I can do that every time if I want to. But, sometimes when the numbers are just really, really, really big, we kind of want to find a different way of doing it. So let me show you, and this is probably how I showed you guys. This is probably, here we go. This is probably how I showed you guys on the video. So I'm thinking of the number 27, And so, guys, when I think of the number 27, there's a couple of numbers that I know multiplied at 27, and those are 3 and 9. And what we're going to do here is we're going to keep playing this game until we cannot break it down anymore, okay? So I know I can't break down the number 3, but I know I can break down the number 9 into 3 and 3, okay? So I'm going to think about this for a second. 27 has the number 3 times, right? And then I'm going to do the same thing for my number 18. So 18, and I want to show you something, guys. When you break up 18, there's different ways you can break down 18, but the answer is always going to be the same. So when I think of 18, I think of 2 and 9, and I know I can't break down 2, but I know I can break down 9 into 3 and 3. So my number 18 is going to have the numbers 2 and 3 and 3. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to see, can we find what we call the LCD, right? And if we want to find the LCD, we're going to say, look, we're going to make a list. All right. Now I want you to look up here, guys. In these two boxes, in essence, I really have two different numbers. I have the number 2 and I have the number 3. I just have them repeated. So every number that I see, I'm going to have to write it down. So I'm going to write down the number 2 and I'm going to write down the number 3. Okay. And then I'm going to ask myself, which one of those red boxes, or one of these, or sorry, black boxes, which one of these has more 2s? And we'd say, well, the 18 does. And we'd say, well, how many 2s are there? Well, there's just one. So I'm just going to have 1 2. And then I'm going to say the same thing. Look, they both have the number 3. But which one has more 3s? Does the 27 have more 3s, or does the 18 have more 3s? And we'll say, well, look, the 27 has more 3s. And how many 3s are there? Well, there's 3 of them, so I need to put 1, 2, and there's the other one. And so now all I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my calculator, or I'm going to multiply these numbers out. So 2 times 3 is 6. So that's a 6. 3 times 3 is 9. And 6 times 9 is going to give me 54. And that's going to be my method of finding my common denominator, right? So the idea is, if my numbers are small enough, okay, if my numbers are small enough, guys, like the first one we did a little while ago, and I'm going to pull this back up. So if my numbers are small enough, like you remember the first problem that we did, my denominators were 4 and 6, so I can just say, hey, I can use my chart, right? It's 12. And that's like probably the easy breezy cover go way of doing it. But what happens if my numbers are bigger, right? And if my numbers are bigger, like 27 and 18, then this here is going to end up being the way I'm going to end up doing it, okay? So let's see. Let me come back over here for a second. Brenda, does that make more sense on how I did that, or at least how I'm able to come up with my answer? And does it, go ahead, Brenda.
It's kind of like when you get to the point where I'm going to pick the 3.3.3 instead of the 3.3. That's where it's kind of like,
Okay, so one thing I want to mention, I'm glad you're bringing this up. So let me do it this way. So
you know what I mean?
Sure yeah. So guys, I want to make sure that we understand that what I'm doing here, these are being multiplied, right? So it's like 3 times 3 times 3, and I understand how you were saying like 3.3.3. I just want to make sure everybody's understanding that they're really.
Oh, I understand that.
Okay, good.
How do I pick the 3 times 3 times 3 or 3 times 3? Like, I need to pick the one that has more of the repetitive number?
Yes, ma'am. So what we're going to do, we're going to pick the one that has the most, okay? Whichever more. So like, look, for instance, let me do this. I'm going to do the same problem, this number 6. I'm going to do it the same way that we did number 5. So the first thing I'm going to think of is I'm going to think of my number 12. And guys, I want to point something out. Whether I go 2 times 6 or whether I go 3 times 4, I'm still going to get the same answer, okay? So look, I'm going to go 2 times 6, and I know I can't break down 2, but then I know 6 I can break down into 2 and 3, and I can't break those down. The idea here, my friends, is when I'm breaking these numbers down, I'm breaking them down into what we call those prime factors, meaning these are numbers that can't be broken down anymore, okay? And then I'm going to do the same thing for the number 15. So 15 I know is just 3 and 5, and those numbers can't be broken down. So here's my 3, and here's my 5. And then we have one more, we have the number 30. And guys, remember, like I said, when you break down 30, whether you go 2 and 15, or whether you go 3 and 10, or whether you go 5 and 6, this piece over here in the little box is going to be exactly the same, okay? So look, if I go 3 and 10, well, I know I can't break down 3, but I can break down 10 into 2 and 5. The only thing that I usually do, guys, when I write my numbers in the box, I put them in order. So I'm going to put a 2, and then a 3, and then a 5. Okay. Now I'm going to do my LCD now. Okay. So look, we're going to go LCD, and I'm going to put a big box right here. Now I want you to think about this. I really have 3 different numbers here. I have the number 2, I have the number 3, and I have the number 5. So when I look at these numbers here, where do I have more 2s? Do I have more 2s in the 12, the 15, or the 30? Does anybody know?
12.
Okay, and how many 2s do we have there?
2.
Excellent. So we're going to go, look, we're going to write the number 2, we're going to write it twice. Okay. Now, I want you to think about the next number kind of in order. Well, the next number is 3. And if you notice, each one of them has the number 3, but every time I see the number 3 in any one of these boxes here, the number 3 in any one of those boxes only occurs one time. Each box only has one 3. So I'm only going to put the number 3 once because none of those boxes have more 3s than any of the others, right? And then the same thing is going to happen with the number 5. When I look at the number 5, like there's 1 5 here, there's 1 5 there. This one doesn't even have a 5. But in any one of those boxes, the most 5s that I ever had was just one of them. And so now all I'm going to do is multiply my numbers out. So I'm going to say, well, look, 2 times 2 is 4. Times 3 and 5 is 15. And 4 times 15 is going to give me 60. Oops, 60. And so there's my common denominator. Does that make any more sense?
Yes.
Excellent. Very good. Perfect. Good. I'm glad we got that. I'm glad we're making some headway here. Guys, before I go on with anything else, Brenda, do you have any more questions? I see Israel, Mariela, Sarina's here. Does anybody else have any other questions y'all want to ask me about anything? Guys, remember, I'm here for you guys, so don't be shy. This is what STC pays me for. Any other questions about anything, Brenda?
Not so far.
Not so far, okay. Sarina, Mariela, Israel, any other questions? Sarina?
I'm pretty good. I got stuck on one question, but one of my friends helped me figure it out.
Okay.
Do you have like a recommendation on how much we should be doing per week to not like overfill ourselves with work?
Yes. Okay. Excellent. So, guys, let me stop sharing this page real quick, and let me share. I'm glad you asked me this question. Let me see. Here we go. Okay. So, guys, what you should be doing each week. So the way I try to break this down, right? I sat down, and again, like one of the things I mentioned to you guys is this is an 8-week class, right? This class is condensed. So I tried to break this down in the manner that I felt was probably the most manageable. So like from last Monday until tomorrow, this is what you guys should have really done, right? You should have tried to do as much of this as possible. And then from today or tomorrow, if you want, until next Tuesday, you should be working on these parts right here. okay? So you don't want to get too far behind. Somebody messaged me the other day, and they did like everything in week 1 and week 2, and they already had it done by last Friday. And I was like, well, that's great. Then that means that this week, you can kind of take it easy. But I try to set them up to where it's like an even number of sections each week, meaning like one week doesn't have a whole lot more than another. So you definitely want to try to follow what I'm putting, for week 1, try to do this so that you know that the next week you can do this. Because otherwise, if you get too far behind, then like for instance, this coming weekend, you're like trying to do a whole lot of stuff and it's going to feel really overwhelming. And if you do everything for the first 2 weeks, if you do it in 1 week, then the second week you're like, okay, what do I do now? And there's not really much to do, and you don't want to feel, either burnt out or overwhelmed, right? Burnt out if you did too much at the beginning, or overwhelmed if you're doing too much at the end. So you want to try to follow with this kind of like suggested schedule. I mean, I set it up so that everything is due. You notice right here, everything is due by April the 6th. This way, if something happens, right, you end up getting busy with something else, you know that you have some leeway, but you really don't want to say, oh, well, look, nothing is due till April the 6th, and then all of a sudden around April 4th, you're like, hey, let's go ahead and open up that laptop. And I'm not saying that anybody's doing that, but it's happened before, right? And I get people who, sir, I didn't get a chance to do this, that, and the other, and now I have to do everything in the last 2 days. So you really kind of want to follow, that kind of model. So let me see. Let me pull up. Let's see. Let me pull up the notes here, guys. And so I'll tell you what. I'm going to kind of move on a little bit here. Let me go through a little bit of 0.3, and I'll probably just do a little bit of this here. Maybe the first couple of examples, and then maybe some where we have to divide. But I definitely want to get to. I'm looking at our calendar. And give me one quick second so that I can access that again, because I do want to at least hit on some of the points that we're supposed to be covering in week 2. Okay, so I want to make sure that I have time to do some of that today. Let's see. So week 2, we should be doing stuff from chapter 1, like 1.4, 1.5. through 1.8, and then 2.1 and 2.2. So I definitely want to get into a little bit of this stuff here. Okay, so let me do a couple of problems from 0.3, and then I'll kind of move on a little bit. Okay. Here we go. All right, so what I have here, guys, just multiplying fractions, right? And it says, how do we multiply fractions? We're going to multiply the numerators, and then we're going to multiply the denominators. And if we can simplify, then we'll go ahead and do that. So let's see. Taking a look at the first problem here, 3 times 2 is 6. 5 times 7 is 35. Oops. It's a little messy. Let's fix that. 35. And so we're done, right? Same thing here. 1 times 5 is 5. 3 times 4 is 12. So I got a 5 over 12, right? Okay. And then let's see, same thing over here. 7 times 1 is 7. 3 times 5 is 15. And so far I haven't had to reduce anything. Let's take a look at the last one. Let's see, 6 times 2 is 12. 5 times 3 is 15. And this one here we can actually reduce. We can divide both of these numbers here by 3. And so when we divide them both by 3, that's going to give me a 4 over 5, right? So my answer here will be 4/5. So guys, one thing I wanted to mention is every time you're doing your fractions, you always want to try to reduce, okay? You want to try to reduce them if you can. It's really important. In my lab, every time you're doing the problems, it's going to ask you to simplify, it's going to ask you to reduce. You want to make sure that we do that, okay? So I'm going to kind of show you I'm going to do one more. I'm just going to do part C here, okay? And I want to show you the process on how to do something like this without having to reduce at the very end, okay? And what I mean by that is if I was doing this problem here, I would say, well, 15 and 10, I know that's going to give me 150. And 8 times 27, guys, we have calculators, so let's use them. I'm going to take my calculator. I'm just going to use my phone real quick. And I'm going to say, what is 8 times 27? And I'm coming up with something like 216, right? So now when I get to this stage, and I might say like, wow, these are some pretty big numbers, right? And where do I get started? How do I start reducing something like this? And the first thing I would do is I would say, well, look, 150 and 216 are both even numbers. That means I can divide them both by 2. So if I take my calculator and I say, well, what's 150 divided by 2? That's going to give me 75. And 216 divided by 2 is going to give me something like 108. And then I might say, okay, well, are they even? Can I still divide them by 2, but 75 can't be divided by 2, right? So if you remember, we had a list of prime numbers, and after 2, the next prime number was the number 3. So I might say, well, look, you know what? Let me try to see if I can divide them both by the number 3. And I'm going to take my calculator again. So I'm going to take 75. I'm going to divide it by 3. That's going to give me 25. Like 3/4 gives me 75 cents. And then I'll take 108 and I'll divide it by 3. And I'm going to come up with 36. And then I think at this point here, guys, I'd have to stop. Okay, I couldn't reduce anymore. And that's where I would end. So this is one way you can do it, okay? Now, the second way you can do this problem, and this is typically how I do mine. I'm just going to rewrite the problem again. 15 over 8 times 10 over a 27, okay? Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the numbers that I have on the top. And for instance, I'm going to pick the number 15. And then I'm going to do a little stare and compare, and I'm going to compare it to the numbers on the bottom. And I'm going to ask myself, is there a common factor between 15 and 8 or 15 and 27? And you might say, what do you mean by common factor? I'm going to show you right now. I'm going to get my multiplication table out one more time. Okay? And I said the two numbers that I was looking at were 15 and 27. So let me just clean this up a little bit. There's a lot of mess here. Okay, and so what I mean by a common factor is I'm going to look at my table and I want to see if I can find the number 15 anywhere. So like I find it right here and I find it right here. Okay, and if I notice, if I move to the right, I also find the number 27. That means that they have a common factor of 3. So I can divide both 15 and 27 by 3. So 3 will go into 15 5 times, and 3 will go into 27 9 times, right? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to come back to my problem that I had before. And I'm going to say, look, we're going to divide both of these numbers by 3. Okay? So when we took 15 and we divided by 3, we got a 5. And when we took 27 and divided by 3, we got a 9. Okay? I'm going to do the same thing with my numbers 10 and 8. Okay? So I'm going to use my table one more time. Give me 1 second, guys. Okay, 10 and 8. And so look, here's 10 and 8. That means they can both be divided by 2. So 2 goes in 8 4 times, and 2 goes into 10 5 times. Alrighty. So I'm going to come back over here. And I say, look, we can divide both these numbers here by 2. So that 8 turns into a 4, and that 10 turns into a 5. And if you notice, when I multiply straight across, guys, 5 and 5 gives me 25. 4 and 9 gives me 36. And if you notice, that should be the same answer that we got right there. Okay. Now, you might ask yourself, what's the advantage of doing it the second way compared to the first way? The second way, what I start noticing is I start noticing common factors. Like I look at 15 and 27 and I say, hey, you know what? You can divide both those numbers by 3. Or I see 8 and 10. You know what? You can divide those numbers both by 2. And the more often that I can start making my numbers smaller from the beginning, usually means that the number at the end, like the way we did here, isn't so big, okay? It's just not as big of a number. So I wanted to at least bring that part out there, okay, to kind of show you what I was referring to. I'm going to scroll down, guys, because I do want us to do some stuff from chapter 1 today. And let me see. I think this is my chapter 1. Yes, this is my chapter 1 right here. And so what I want to do with some chapter 1 stuff is, and I'm going to kind of jump around a little bit, but let's see, yeah. I want to bring up, let me see if I can find it. Here we go. I'll start from right here, okay? And guys, one thing that I wanted to mention is, and if you've watched the video, you'll know this, and if you haven't had a chance to watch the video, that's okay. I'm going to explain to you right now. I want you to think about positive numbers as money that I have, and I want you to think about negative numbers as money that I owe, okay? So I'm going to actually start with this problem right here, and then I'll come back and do this one in a second. So I want you to notice something here. I have $8 and I owe you $7. So if I have $8 but I owe you $7, and I run into you in the hallway and you say, hey, pay me, and I say, okay, and if I have 8 but I owe you 7, would you agree that I would still be left with 1? Right? That's how much money I'd still have in my pocket after I gave you the 7 that I owed you, right? And then this one here says, look, I already owe you $7. And then today I borrowed $2 from you this morning. And tomorrow I borrow another $5 from you. How much money would I owe you now? Well, if I owed you 7 and I borrowed 2 and I borrowed another 5, I'm now going to owe you 14, right? Because I continue to borrow and borrow and borrow money, right? And I'm going to do the same thing here for this one. Notice it's fractions, but that's okay. So the nice thing about this problem, guys, is the denominator is the same in every case. So I'm just going to write one big fraction with a denominator, okay? And I'm going to put 2 plus -8 plus 1. So remember what this means here. This means I have $2, and look what this means. I have another $1. So if I have $2 in one pocket, another $1 in another pocket, now I have $3. Okay. So if I have $3, but I owe you 8, I don't have enough money to pay you. So I'm still going to owe you $5, right? And then now the last thing I want to do, guys, is I'm just going to say, look, couldn't I reduce 5 and 15? So I don't want to forget the negative because it's still right here. And I can divide both of these numbers by 5. That's going to give me a 1, and that's going to give me a 3. And there's my answer. So before I go on, did this part here make any sense on how I did these 3 problems in terms of positive being how much money I have, negative being how much money I owe? Did that seem to make any sense?
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. Perfect. Good, good, good. Okay, so guys, I'm going to show you how I'm going to do the next one, and then I'll kind of move on to something a little slightly different. So for this one here, I'm going to use my calculator, and I'm going to see, let me see if I can get it going here. And let's try something here. Here we go. Okay, so I'm going to write down the problem just so that I have it. Negative 1.8 plus 1.4 plus negative 2.6. Okay, so let me stop sharing this part here. I'm going to share one more thing with you guys, and then we'll come back and do a little bit more. So let's try this. Okay, here we go. So guys, all I did is on my computer, I just went to the little search button and I typed in calculator, right? So my answer is, my problem is negative 1.8. So this button right here gives me my negative. So I'm going to hit negative 1.8, okay? And I'm going to go plus, and you know what? I don't see a negative in front of there, so let me try something. I think I might need to do 1.8 first, and then maybe hit it. There we go. So 1.8, and then the negative, plus 1.4, plus, and then I got to go 2.6 and make it negative, and then hit equals, and my answer is coming up to, let's see, I think so. Yeah, that's it, negative 3, and there's, I'm done. That's all I got to do. So let me stop sharing this part, and let me come back to my notes. Here we go, and yes, you guys can see it. So this here gave me a negative 3. Okay. All right. I'm going to kind of skip down, guys, because I really want to get to this part here. The subtraction part can be a little bit confusing at times, and I really want to try to make it as easy breezy coverable as I can. So for 1.2 on subtracting real numbers, it says subtract means to add the opposite of the second number. Okay, so the first number, guys, here, this first number is never going to change. If you notice, it stays the same. It was a 7, a negative 5, a 3, and a negative 8, a 7, a negative 5, a 3, and a negative 8. What we do, though, is we change the subtraction sign, and I'm going to circle the subtraction sign in every one of these problems. We change those all to additions, okay? And then the second number, which is the number that I'm underlining, we're going to change its sign. We're going to do the opposite. So if you notice here, I underlined the number 4. Here I have a negative 4. Here I underlined 3. Here I have a negative 3. Here I underlined negative 6. I got a positive 6. Here I underlined negative 2, and I got a positive 2. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I already know how to add numbers with different signs, right? So if I have $7, but I owe you 4, well, I'm left with 3. And if I owe you 5 and I borrow another 3, well, I owe you 8. And if I have $3 in one pocket and 6 in another, now I'm left with 9. And if I owe you 8 and I only have 2, I'm still going to owe you 6. And so I'm going to do that with every single one of these problems that I have. So I'm going to show you what I mean by that. So I want you to look at the first one that I have here, 23 minus 57. I'm going to leave the 23 alone. Oops. I'm going to leave the 23 alone. I'm going to change this minus to a plus, and then I'm going to put a negative 57, okay? Because the number here is positive 57, that negative became the plus sign, so I had to change that positive 57 into a negative. So if I have $23, but I owe you 57, after I give you the $23 that I have, I'm still going to owe you 34, right? And so I'll do the same thing here for this one. I'm going to leave this first number alone, negative 17. This minus sign here, guys, is going to become a plus. And then whatever number I have here, the sign needs to change. So if it's a negative 13, I'm going to put a positive 13. And so if I owed you $17 and all I had was 13, I would still owe you 4. And so, like I said, sometimes people get a little confused with this process. So I want to make sure that we're okay with this. I want to make sure that we understand when I'm subtracting numbers, what do I do? And so the first number stays the same. The subtraction sign becomes positive, and then the number directly to the right of the positive sign, whatever number that is, the sign of that number has to change, okay? So I'll tell you what, let's try this one here. And I'm going to ask you guys a couple of questions. Does anybody know what I should do? Anybody know what I should do with the first number?
You leave it alone.
Leave it alone. So we're going to write a negative 11. Good, perfect. What do I need to do with that minus sign? Anybody know?
Make it a plus.
Make it a plus. Perfect. And then what am I supposed to do with the sign of this number? Anybody know? With this number here, guys, we got to change the sign. So if it's a negative 19, we're just going to write the number 19. And then now I can say, look, I owe you $11 and I have 19. And I see you by the water fountain and you say, hey, give me my $11 that I owe you. And I say, okay. And I still get to walk away with $8, right? That's how much money I still have left. So that's going to be the process, guys, every single time that I'm going to do these types of problems, okay? Every single time I'm going to do these types of problems, this is what I'm going to be doing. So look, I'm going to show you one more. I'm going to do this one here with the fractions. And so the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to look at my denominators. So my denominators are 3 and 4, right? So just to walk you through the process, I'm going to take my chart, right? And, excuse me. And I'm going to look at my numbers. Let me clean this mess up. Okay. So here's 3, here's 4. The first number they have in common is 12, right? So that's going to be my common denominator. I know I'm going to be using the number 12. Okay, so I'm going to write a 12 right here. I'm going to write a 12 right here. Okay, now I'm going to look at the first one, which was a 3. I'm going to say, what did I multiply 3 by to get 12? I multiplied it by 4. So I'm going to multiply this guy by 4. So there's still a minus sign there with an 8. Okay. I'm going to clean this up just so you can see what I'm referring to. This is not erasing. Okay. All right. So now let's try this one here. So I'm going to multiply 4 by 3. So I'm going to do 1 by 3. So I'm going to put a minus right here. I'm going to put my 3. Okay. Just like we said earlier, guys, remember, the first number is going to stay the same. So I'm going to leave my minus with my 8 over 12 right here. This subtraction sign becomes a plus. The sign of this number needs to change. So if I look on the inside, because I don't see anything in front of that 3, it's supposed to be a positive 3. So I'm going to put a negative 3 over 12. And then finally, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add these together. And that's going to give me a negative 11 over 12, right? Because if I owed you $8 and I borrowed 3 more, I would now owe you 11, okay? So guys, we're just on about a time. So let me stop sharing this screen with you here. Let's see, I think you guys can see me. So I'm going to go ahead and stop recording too, guys. I wanted to let you